What is up, everybody? Thank you for stopping by to talk a trio of Dynasty trades involving Zay Flowers. If you want to skip ahead and go to the first deal, by all means, go for it. But before I get there, my name is Chu. You can check me out on Twitter and, of course, here on YouTube at Father Dynasty. Talking about Zay Flowers, the Ravens, of course, exited the playoffs in, I would say, disappointing fashion. I know that much has been said about the Ravens under Lamar Jackson, getting into the playoffs, not quite being able to get over that hump. Similar situations been talked about Josh Allen, but I really feel like what the Ravens have right now is pretty incredible, and I think it was disappointing for sure, but I really think they're very close, and I think a key piece of that is going to be Zay Flowers. So finishing the 2023 season, Zay Flowers, his rookie year, 12.9 fantasy points per game compares to a fellow rookie, Jordan Addison, at 13 points per game. It was truly an embarrassment of riches, I think, for fantasy managers when it came to rookies this season, especially at the wide receiver position. You've got Puka Nacua as a wide receiver one. Tank Dell didn't finish the season, but on an average per game basis, wide receiver 2. And you got Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, Jordan Addison, and Zay Flowers all finishing as a wide receiver 3. All of these guys better than a Garrett Wilson, a Chris Godwin, a George Pickens, Terry McLaurin. Again, some of those guys having down years for different situations, I understand that, but I think really just to put it in perspective, we've been spoiled in the past by, say, a Justin Jefferson, even back in the day, shows my age, a Juju Smith-Schuster having a tremendous rookie season. We've been spoiled, but that was spoiling at the highest level. This is having not only Puka, but you have the Tank Dell, you have the Jaden Reed, you have a number of other rookies all in this same year that are having tremendous seasons. And I think that's very exciting, obviously. Zay Flowers, of course, being towards the back end of that group of rookies, but I don't really think you should be disappointed. I think what Zay Flowers did in that Baltimore offense, again, Todd Monken, new OC, so new look offense for all of those guys. Lamar, of course, under a new deal, so a lot of moving parts, a lot of changes. Of course, a couple of guys brought in as free agents, a couple of them moving out to look ahead for next year in 2024-2025 season. We've got Flowers, Bateman, and Wallace. It's Tylan Wallace are under contract, and of course includes Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. But that does mean Odell Beckham Jr. and Nelson Aguilar will be unrestricted free agents. They came in. I can't speak to, they are the veterans, so I don't know if there was some level of, the veteran steadiness, they've been there before, that kind of thing, that guidance that they provided. I know after the loss, the playoff loss for the Ravens, I specifically saw Odell Beckham Jr. specifically consoling a couple different players on there. So one of them maybe actually was Zay Flowers, of course, with his some of the flub ups that he had in that game. So who knows? I don't know. I would like to think that they're going to bring back maybe Odell. I don't know. It was pretty expensive, the deal they brought him in on. So if he thinks he's getting a raise with the production he had, I think he's fooling himself. But I would presume with what they've got, Bateman had flashes, nothing crazy. Flowers, I feel like, grew throughout the season. Again, his rookie season. So I think they will probably add another receiver. And again, this draft is deep in receivers, so they would be wise to do that. But for Zay, ending his rookie season the way that he did, the last thing that fantasy managers are going to remember is seeing him fumble at the goal line, and whether you agree with it or not that it was or wasn't a penalty, or it was, but they should have also called it in the other team, the taunting penalty where he had pushed the DB down and then, did the step over, the AI step over. We all know, and I don't think anyone would disagree with this, the step over, the clear step over taunt, you're going to get flagged for that every time. Is it fair? Who am I to say? There's plenty of taunting that goes on throughout the entirety of the game. You see it on camera. It's not off-camera stuff that you hear about. You see it. And, you saw it even throughout this game specifically. It's unfortunate that not only that it was called, but it's more the timing of it. He makes this big play. Again, I don't think the game got derailed from there, and the Ravens lost from that point. But I'm sure them as players and us as fans watching the game, we always kind of try and pick these different kind of points that created that change, or where the crux, where it started to kind of, the wheels to fall off. And arguably that may have been one of those points. I think the Ravens really just, the offensive game plan was not clicking the way that I feel like it should have been and had been the rest of the season before that. But that is neither here nor there. So to point all that out, just to let you know that, Zay Flowers ended on a rough note in his rookie season, and let that kind of cast a shadow for other fantasy managers in thinking that's the Zay they remember. They think of him that way. They think of him as he can't hold on to the ball, he's fumbling, and he can't control himself, he's getting a penalty. Let them believe that and let you get a discount, because this guy in fantasy is someone you want. So in Keep Trade Cut, he is the wide receiver 20, and that is one behind JSN and one ahead of Michael Pittman. And I've got him as the wide receiver 17 in my Dynasty rankings. And you can check the rest of those out, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, over at goingfor2.com. Myself and my fellow going for tours is, I guess, what you would call us, have the Dynasty ranks up, and even throughout the offseason, updating as much as we can. I know offseason, there isn't as much actionable news to adjust for, but we'll be doing that. And, of course, we'll be adjusting for rookies as well, as we have the Senior Bowl going on right now. But jumping into the first deal, this one's clean and simple. I just like to get these out of the way sometimes just to get a one-for-one comparison when it comes to draft value. So we got a 12-team start 9 full PPR, no tight end premium. Zay Flowers for a 2025 first. And with this, I don't know the specific ins and outs in terms of, is there any confidence that this is a early, mid, or late 2025 first? Realistically, the fair practice is to assume it's going to be a mid. I'm taking Zay Flowers. When I look at this, and this one was done, I believe, a day ago as of this recording, so of course it's an off-season type of trade, I think this is pretty fair value. I would still take Zay Flowers, but I think when you're looking at 2025 and the ambiguity of what that pick would be, where that's going to fall, and it being a 12-team, if it's a later one, could be 9, 10, 11. I trust Zay Flowers. I trust what they're doing over there. Lamar Jackson is under contract for a number of years. Todd Monken is I think, that guy. Again, I question kind of how that offense was flowing in their last playoff game there in the conference championship, but as a whole, I trust kind of what they're building there. And, there's always liquidity in a first, again, even if it's 2025, because, again, after we have the second that 2024 rookie draft is over, the 2025 first, the value skyrockets, simply because that's the next draft. Even if it's sincerely going to be 364 days for that next draft, it's going to skyrocket. But for me, this is one of those where you kind of have that comfort in Zay Flowers. I know what I've got there, and it's not settling. It's not saying, I don't want the volatility. It's Zay Flowers. You don't have to believe he's the best rookie in this class, and I don't. I sincerely don't. Again, I rattled off before a number of other guys that finished ahead of him, and going forward, I'm sure each will have growth in different areas. But Zay Flowers is a solid receiver, and liked him out of college, and I was a bit leery about the spot at first with how wide receivers end up doing in Baltimore, but I think he had a pretty strong rookie season, and I think we were spoiled by some of the other rookie seasons for wide receivers there, but he's going to do well. So jumping over into the second deal, 12-team, start 10, full PPR, and 1 point tight end premium. So we've got Zay Flowers, Chase Brown, 2024 first, and a 2024 second for Jalen Waddle, and a 2026 first. This one was a little tricky for me for two different reasons, actually. So Chase Brown, I'm a fan. Again, going into the season, I had my doubts. Not necessarily with landing spot. I think anyone was looking for who's going to Cincinnati. Mixon's already taken a pay cut. Samaje Piran's gone. There's been some health stuff with Henderson. You have Chris Evans, who's been kind of up and down. So who is the guy that's going to step in and be the complimentary back and possibly someone who's going to really eat into Joe Mixon's touches? Joe Mixon had I think, a pretty tremendous season. He continues to be the steady force in that backfield. And again, for as long as it feels like he's been around in the NFL, he's still not that old. But definitely has some miles on him. And again, going through this offseason, I don't know what's going to happen with his contract and what they have to do with it. But seems to be that he would be staying there. But I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about Chase Brown, again, as we saw with Samaje Perine when he was there, and he still had some real fantasy value when he stepped in for Joe Mixon when he was injured. Chase Brown, very intriguing back. Again, it's not strictly as a handcuff. Again, I think he has a little more outside the tackles speed kind of element to him than Joe Mixon does. And so if you simply look at him as a complementary back, there's value. As I feel like a lot of us have learned, the NFL, I think it's a bit overblown devaluing the running backs, but I think there's tremendous value when you look at these guys who can do a bit of everything and are the complementary back. Handcuff value, certainly, but also handcuff value doesn't mean much until they step into the role and actually have to have an expanded role and see what they can do with it. There's plenty of those backs where it's like, oh, well, they're the second back. You know, they get the second most touches. When the first guy goes down, they step in and get the same amount of touches. Not always the case. And it may or may not be the case with Chase Brown, but I think with a healthy Joe Burrow, again, he had a rough start to the season, but kind of was kind of catching his stride and then had his injury and was out for the rest of the year. Zay Flowers, again, like I've talked about, I'm big on him. Again, I don't think he's the best in the class, but I think he's in a solid tier to where you want to go get him if you can at a discount at this point. You get a 24 first and a 24 second on top of that. Again, I like Jalen Waddle. Second fiddle to Tyreek Hill, but again, he's in an explosive offense. Tua Tagovailoa is going to be resigned, I would assume. You get a 26 first. You don't know what that's going to be. You have to wait a couple years for it, but again, I understand why someone would take the Waddle in 2026 first side, but I'm taking Zay Flowers, Chase Brown, 24 first, 24 second. It's a 12-team start 10. I like that little bit of depth, and you have the more immediate liquidity in the 24 first and the 24 second. Possibly even trade those around and see what you can do with it. So, yeah, taking the Zay Flowers side on that one. So jumping over to the third of the three trades. So this is a big one. So we've got 12-team, start 10, full PPR, no tight end premium. Trey McBride, Jaden Reed, and a 2024 second for Zay Flowers and Dalton Kincaid. So Trey McBride had quite an explosive season this year. To start the year, you had Ertz dealing with some injury, coming back, blowing up in a major way. Then he got hurt, kind of receded back. Trey McBride stepped up. Kyler Murray coming back into the fold from his injury. Again, I know the Cardinals didn't end up with a tremendous record, but I feel like with the kind of connection you saw there with Trey McBride's growth, not a lot of other pass-catching options outside of him. There's some, but I mean in terms of fantasy production, Trey McBride had a tremendous year. Jaden Reed, someone who I was tremendously high on, was so glad to see him do so well in Green Bay. Again, I had my doubts personally about Jordan Love, but what a unique wide receiving core they have in Green Bay. I've mentioned it before, but the youth that they have there and the mix of the first, second, third, like it's not just we stacked a bunch of first rounders for a couple of years consecutively and it's all the wide receivers there. It's a mixed bag. I mean, Dontavian Wicks, like, you know, got a UVA. It's an interesting mix, but I think it's mixing very well. And it's interesting to see that's how they're building the wide receiver core as they have the aging running back group, as Aaron Jones may or may not come back. A.J. Dillon, I believe, his contract was up as well. So who knows what that looks like. But for me, I like Zay Flowers. I like Dalton Kincaid. I thought Dalton Kincaid's value was inflated going into the season. He had his kind of good moments where it's kind of rising up a little bit. But again, I'm taking Trey McBride, Jaden Reed, and you're giving me a 2024 second. Absolutely. The value's right there. Again, 12-team, start 10. So I trust, again, I have McBride over Kincaid anyway, and Jaden Reed is my guy. But even just to kind of eliminate that bias of how I feel about Jaden Reed, you're also giving me a second in 2024? Yes. Please give me that. Take it to the bank. But yeah, let me know what you think about any one of these three trades. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And more importantly, let me know, do you have anything similar? Do you have a Zay Flowers trade? You already made it. You're just curious of, what the kind of fantasy community thinks about it. Or you have one maybe in your inbox, or you're considering sending it and you just kind of want to get some feedback. I know me, myself, I am always very curious just to kind of, whether it's group text with some of my closer buddies or just kind of looking around the fantasy community and kind of seeing what are similar, players and deals kind of going for. So drop it in the comments. Please let me know. I love to talk Dynasty trades each and every day, so please do that. And happy Dynasty.